Senator Coons, Senator Fischer.
Thank you to the chair and ranking member for having this hearing today, and thank you to all the members of the panel for coming. Director Criswell, as you know, Nebraska saw 5 separate major disasters declared in 2024. And I've heard from communities across the state that have faced lengthy delays due to FEMA processing and the red tape that takes place in bureaucracies. Many of these communities are still in the process of recovering from the 2019 flooding along the Missouri River. One example that I have recently was in the city of Plattsmouth, which backs up against the Missouri. The city has waited nearly all of this calendar year on a very minor scope of work change request. And these are small rural communities with limited resources, and they're really doing the best they can to support their residents. I can appreciate you and your best, that you're doing that, your best with the resources and the staff that you have. But the issues I'm talking about here aren't ones of manpower. It's not one of logistics. It's paperwork. It's red tape. Will you commit to working with my office and the Nebraska Emergency Management Agency to ensure that these impacted communities can receive timely responses and are not subject to these really, really long delays, which we all know add costs to the project in the long term?
Senator Fischer, I've been a local emergency manager, and I understand what they're going through. You definitely have my commitment, and we are looking always for ways to reduce the bureaucracy, like recently changing the small project threshold to $1 million to reduce some of that paperwork burden for these smaller communities. We'll continue to work with you, and if you have the specific case, I'll look into it personally.
Okay, great. We'll be in touch, and Plattsmouth will be happy to hear that hopefully we'll get some of that red tape cut for them soon. Secretary Buttigieg, nice to see you. I've heard from state DOTs that there's a lack of consistent guidance from the U.S. DOT regarding the requirements needed for states to justify building back better after a disaster. The ability for state DOTs to efficiently use federal funds to prevent future infrastructure damage is imperative. How is U.S. DOT ensuring that clear and consistent guidance is being provided to our state DOTs on the resilience eligibility for reimbursement after a disaster?
I think your question captures the fact that in many cases it doesn't make sense to replace something in the exact form fashion that it was designed 30, 50, or 100 years ago, especially in the face of increasingly severe and frequent extreme weather. Our programs do contemplate the ability to do that, and we work to make sure not only is there a categorical exclusion designed to cut the red tape for projects that simply are about replacement, but that there's support for enhancing and increasing the resiliency of what is designed, including knowing sometimes a significant design change is appropriate given what might have just been learned. The statute does constrain us in some ways, but often it is possible within the framework of statute to justify those improvements or betterments by showing that if you consider the reduced risk, there really is a cost benefit to those improvements. Would be happy to work with you or your team or any other states that you have spoken with on any specific cases where they're trying to get the right flexibility. We'll do whatever we can to support them.
I'd be interested in hearing any suggestions you may have. I know we're on a short time frame, but to hear any suggestions you may have when you reference the existing statutes that we have to work with now. What can we do in a new Congress, most likely when we're looking at another transportation bill, to be able to use our resources in a responsible manner, but also to move projects quicker? If you have specific changes, I'd really be interested in hearing some of those.
Would welcome a chance to work with you on that. Should I preview them now or just?
No.
All right, we'll get back to you on that. Thanks very much.
I have another question for you. while I have you here, within days of that 2019 major flooding event that hit Nebraska, NDOT requested quick response emergency funding from FHWA. However, it took the agency over 3 years to release the quick release funds that were there. These funds that are to be used for priority emergency repair work on federal aid routes. So why isn't FHWA able to reimburse for emergency repairs in a more reasonable amount of time? And again, do you have any ideas on how to make that process go more quickly in the future? I would really like to see that happen.
I'm not familiar with what took place in 2019 before we arrived, but what I will say is that our goal and generally our practice in recent disasters has been to turn around a quick release request the same day. Now, that does involve working closely with the Department of Transportation involved to identify those dollars that are really going to be needed right away and can be put to use first versus those that are more appropriate for a semi-annual allocation. But in both instances, whether we're talking about a foreseeable longer-term expenditure or something where we're talking about slope stabilization or rerouting traffic, something you need right away, that funding is no barrier to those on the ground trying to get that problem solved, and want to continue to engage on any refinements to the program that would help with that. I will note the Federal Highway Administration is in the process of a full overhaul and revision of the ER manual that lays out a lot of those procedures, and I'm hopeful that that will bring additional clarity and refinement to the process that might have helped in the situation you were describing.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Senator Schatz.
Thank you, Chair.